Howdy guys, it's the fourth judge here. Today we're going to break down the UFC 329 card, starting with the very first fight on the early prelims, going all the way to the main card, which is McGregor versus Holloway 2. Super amped for this fight, so let's get into it. Alright, so we have Alessandro Costa versus Cody Durden. I think in both of our eyes here, this is a pretty one-sided fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I see this being a pretty one-sided fight. Costa, all of his wins come by a finish, so I'm seeing that probably being the same kind of case with Durden here.
Yeah.
Durden is 7-8 in the UFC, 7-8-1 draw, so isn't necessarily a winning record. He is riding a 4-fight losing streak coming into a unanimous decision on his last fight. So
Yeah, but I will say though, like him beating Philho, he was definitely not supposed to beat Philho. But that's kind of the thing with Durden is that like he's gonna beat the guys he shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna step up to the plate when it's like, dude, why? You know what I'm saying? But I think Alessandro Costa sits in that area where it's like, I mean, given he's also a good striker, he seems well rounded all around. I don't think he's that great of a fighter, but I think he's good enough to get through Durden. You know what I'm saying? But I think Durden's like one of those, one of those guys that's not that good, but then turns it on when you least expect it. You know what I'm saying? To pull out some scrappy split decision or unanimous decision. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, that's kind of how I see it. If it goes to distance, and I could see Durden doing something kind of unexpected and winning by a split, but in my eyes, I see Costa taking this either
Yeah.
round 1 or 2 by stoppage.
Yep, I 100% agree. Like there's definitely like a 10-20% of me that sees Cody Durden lands a big hit, round 2 somehow that wobbles him, and he's able to kind of smother him for a little bit, and then makes it a scrappy third round. I could totally see a split decision going to, or totally see it. I could see a split decision going to him. But yeah, overall, I definitely see Costa getting this done in the first two. And I think
Yep,
the
yeah, it
odds
sounds like
kind
we
of
have the same
reflect that.
idea.
Awesome. Okay, let's move on to the next one here. All right. Ryan Gandra versus Zachary Reese, man. I mean, we've got dog shit versus horse shit right here. This is not a fun fight. This is hard to tell. And just a heads up, we're getting all of our odds from FanDuel as of July 8th I guess it's around 10 p.m. Eastern. But yeah, so let's get into this. Zachary Reese versus Ryan Gandra. I mean, Zachary Reese, dude, the split decision with Michelle Pereira looks good, and that's horrible to say because Michelle Pereira has been on downhill spiral. If it was not the recent Shara performance where it's like, really spoke more to about how mediocre Shara might actually be, his record looks so bad. Beat Jackson McVeigh, whatever, man. No contest with Zachary Dumas via nut shots, you know what I'm saying? And it was kind of like, oh, I got nut shotted, let's just quit. But, Zachary Reese is a big guy for middleweight. You know what I'm saying? And he's shredded. He's the type of guy that you look at and you're like, you should be a good fighter. You know what I'm saying? Like, anyone who's not watching UFC regularly and sees some of these guys on the street, you'd be like, man, he's probably a great fighter. But I don't see it. Give me some words on Ryan Gandra, sorry.
Yeah, Gandra 9-1. It is only his second fight in the UFC. He did have one KO TKO in the Contender Series. All of his UFC fights have gone by first round finish now. It's kind of how I'm seeing this one as another early stoppage for Gandra. But like you said, it is one of those where Reese is a big middleweight. He does have a reach advantage. He has almost a 3-inch reach advantage. The fight lines, kind of like you were talking about, the fight lines have gotten closer than what they started at. So whether that's just bets coming in on the other side or them realizing that Gandra is a little bit newer and Reese does have reach advantage and a little bit more experience.
Yeah. And I think too, Ryan Gandra hasn't looked, even with his two finishes, like he has not looked like it's Trent Miller and Jose. I don't even know who Trent Miller is, man. But Jose Medina, Jose Medina is a middleweight, blob. Like he's really not doing much. You know what I'm saying? Like Zachary Reese won, but via unanimous decision. But even when Ryan Gandra got him out of there, it's like it's Jose Medina. You know what I'm saying? It's just a punching bag. I think that's where that closeness to odds is starting to be reflected. I will say, Zachary Reese is training with Nixick and that group. And they've saw nothing but good things. But I think Nick Sick's also one of those coaches. Oh, I think most coaches are, where it's like you can have success with some guys, but some guys are just not fighters. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes I worry Zachary Reese falls into that category. Given that finish was on Jackson McVeigh, I think helped him at least get some spirit off to at least hold it to a split decision with Michelle Pierre, and Michelle Pierre also being complete ass also helped that. But nonetheless, I think he does stand a good chance here, and I think Ryan Gandra can get into a moment where it's the lights are too bright. I'm on a McGregor card, my second UFC fight ever, third if you want to count the Contender Series. I think we might see something like that.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm leaning Gandra kind of early finish, but I think if it goes deeper rounds, I start to lean a little bit more Reese. Reese has 3 submission wins, so it could be one of those where, kind of like you said, Gandra starts to feel the pressure of the moment. The fight gets into that 10, 12, 13-minute kind of time, and
he's not a light guy.
The fight hits the ground. So now you're on the ground with someone who's probably, just looking at physical stature, as a big guy, maybe some more muscle mass behind him, and has some submission wins.
And Ryan Gandra has 0 takedowns. Given I think that's just UFC stats, but 0 takedowns. Given we're talking about like 3 minutes total of fight time, so you really can't take much for that. But I mean, he has a mounted arm triangle, But we're talking, that's on what is that? Bison Combat 3? Yeah, man, we're not fucking talking about Bison Combat. Yeah, I think you're right. We're getting into 2 or 3. You start to run out of steam to kind of defend the submissions. Maybe Zachary Reese locks something up. Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. All right. Farid Basharat versus short notice replacement John Garza. This was supposed to be Ethan Ewing, which disappointing. I think Ewing got an injury or something. But yeah, I mean, I think we're both kind of similar, and the odds show that. I mean, we were talking about this before recording, but was it yesterday or the day before? John Garza got put in and was the favorite, for I guess like a couple hours or something, and now, the odds have completely flipped to kind of what me and you have both kind of. I think we're both thinking, Farid Basharat. I don't think he's I think he's like a gatekeeper. You know what I'm saying? We were kind of mentioning this. A gatekeeper that's young-ish. A gatekeeper that, just, can't really get above those real good guys, but can have a competitive fight with a decent guy. Like, I think Matsumoto, I don't think he's that good, but I think he's decent. Took him to a split decision. Gutierrez, mediocre, took him to a decision. Hugo, again, mediocre, took him to a decision. I don't think you come in here fresh after fighting. I mean, Fury FC isn't horrible, but after coming from Fury FC, I don't think Farid Basharat's the guy you beat off rip. What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm leaning to. It's typically on your debut, you're going to be coming in someone who is a pretty no name, lower down on the totem pole of that weight class, and kind of like you said, Basharat isn't. I don't see him beating anyone in the top 5. Of the 135 division, but he is still a good fighter, like you said. He's kind of that almost younger gatekeeper where it's hard for the new up and comings to get through him, but if they do, then that kind of gives you a good outlook on what their kind of trajectory looks like. So that's kind of how I'm looking at this. We obviously don't know much about Garza. He's quick. It's you find that a lot with these smaller guys where their strikes are always pretty quick. Some of the highlights that you can find on him, he's got good body shots and stuff like that. But really coming in and into a ranked opponent, someone who is riding a 6-fight win streak in the UFC, 15-fight win streak on his record, like Basharat, it's a pretty big task. And then kind of like we said on the fight before, this is a T-Mobile Arena, Conor McGregor on the main card, first fight in the UFC. Like, can your stakes and your opponent be much bigger than what they're throwing at Garza on this first fight?
Yeah, 100%. And now, given you do have some guys that, that's what they want. They want the lights to be bright. Sometimes they thrive in that. And I think sometimes that works better for a guy that's new versus a guy that's had, some exposure in the UFC, like a Contender Series knockout, and then gets thrown into this situation. But still, we're talking about a guy in Farid Basharat that is not a one-trick pony. You know what I'm saying? He has decent striking. He has the good takedown defense. He has good ground game. I think we're both on the same page here. Okay. Anything else you want to mention on this one?
No, I think that kind of sums it up. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're both on Basharat here.
and I think it's pretty
Like you said,
obvious.
I think this is a good fight though. If Garza comes in and like you said, he's someone
Mhm.
who shines under the lights, then
We could have a
this is a
really
good
good
person
fight.
to
Yeah.
start pushing his name. You know, you
Hmm.
come in on a big card like this, people are going to be watching. Maybe
Yeah.
not as many early prelims, but there's going to be people with their eyes on this card that wouldn't know his name because it is a
Yes.
giant fight card. So if he gets a win over this, I think that we could see him maybe being pushed and rise quickly. But in my opinion, I don't see it going his way.
Awesome. All right. On to the next one. Your favorite fighter, Pinas, versus Cesar Almeida. Yeah, I think. I think we're. Are we both in agreement here? What's your thoughts on this? I see Pinas. Pinas. I see him getting this done. Second round. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do see Cesar Almeida maybe giving some toughness. I think he has a little bit of a chin on him. You know what I'm saying? Went all the way through with Olin Jaceks. I think that's his younger brother. He seems decent. But I don't think I think Pinas is going to be a decent middleweight. I think he's going to be a top 15 middleweight. I don't know about top 10 yet, but I think he'll be a top 15. What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of how I see this going. You know, coming into this, Pinas is 9-1. You know, only
Mm-hmm.
one fight in the UFC, but also one fight in the Dana White Contender Series.
Mm-hmm.
His only loss comes from an illegal strike to a grounded opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So, without the DQ loss there, he'd be 9-0.
Yeah.
He's also has almost a 6-inch reach advantage and is 14 years younger than
Yeah.
Almeida. So,
Wait, how? What's
I
the
think
reach?
that
What's the reach advantage?
uh, the reach is 5.5. So
Oof.
Pinas has 79.5 inch and Almeida
Jeez.
is a 74. So going into someone who has knockout power, finish potential, always hunting that finish, younger and that much of a reach advantage, I just don't see it being a very easy day for Almeida.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And it's not like Almeida is some type of takedown lord. You know what I'm saying? No takedowns in the UFC. I think this is an easy day for Pinas. I think this one honestly should be the odds that the Farid fight has. Maybe I'll eat my words, but like I think this should be like a minus 400 for Pinas. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe I'm really just shitting on Almeida here, but yeah, you know. But okay, you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, yeah, we can move on.
All right, your favorite fighter, Tracy Cortez versus the Kong Wang. Now, the first thing we will mention, we're putting Pinas before Kong, before Wang. Sorry, not Kong, but Wang. We're making two penis jokes. Come on, man. Can't do that. We got to split them up by a fight or two.
Yeah, the UFC knew what they were doing with
Yeah,
that one.
exactly, exactly. But yeah, man, I think this is the one that we're the most split on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the most split on. I think we both understand the threats that each of them pose, but I think we both see different methods. So I think Wen Kong is good all around. I think Cortez. I don't think she's on the downward yet, but I think she's got to get there soon. You know what I'm saying? I think she's about ready to be, on that downward kind of trend. She is, how old is she? 32. Oh wow. You know, Wen Kong's 34. Wow. Man.
Just the Asian aging.
Yeah, given and Wen Kong's has a lot less miles. You know what I'm saying? Tracy's
Yeah.
been in a lot of UFC fights, a lot of tough UFC fights. Given Kong's been in a couple bruisers, a couple ones where she's bled. But yeah, I see Kong overwhelming her. I think Cortez can do good when someone tries to rush in the pocket, but I think Kong's going to do it like in a blitz manner, not to just get in the clinch, but to try and attack. But man, this one's really a coin flip for me. I could see maybe Cortez locking up a sub, but I think Kong. I'm not sure if it was in the Da Silva fight or the Mora fight. But I know she defended while they were on her back for a bit. So I have faith in her submission defense, stuff along those lines. But yeah, man, give me the breakdown. What do you think about Cortez?
Yeah, so I think I would be taking Cortez in this one. You know, her most recent losses and her only losses in the UFC come by Aaron Blanchfield, who is arguably one of the best in the division coming up, and
Mm,
a previous champion of Thug Rose.
yep.
I think the biggest thing for Cortez and what we've seen in the more recent past, which is kind of why people start to think she's on that kind of downward slope, is that she doesn't go into her wrestling like she did at the beginning. She's a decision queen. not going to be the most amazing. It doesn't have fight of the night or performance bonus written on it at all. But
Yeah.
if she can really get back to her roots of wrestling heavy and do some ground and pound, then I could see her taking this by a decision. I don't necessarily love any finishes or anything. Cong obviously would have I think, more finish potential than Cortez. But I think the way to victory for Cortez here is just get back to your roots, wrestle, ground and pound, just ride it out for those 3 rounds like you've done so many times in your past.
Yeah, 100%. I 100%. I think, I will say though, Kong's gone to decision multiple times here, in the UFC, but like we're talking against people that are also young, that also don't have, a whole bunch of experience on them, that are kind of, I mean, more not so much, but Brazil, has kind of done more finishes per se, or is more of a finish-esque person, and, took her to decision. But yeah, I think if it does go, if we're talking about decision masters, we are talking about Tracy Cortez. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, she's
And
the
her
decision
decisions
queen.
do come from people who don't mind to stand with her. So,
Yes.
when you
Yeah.
look at like the Silva fight, that goes to a decision, but you're talking about I think it was over 100 strikes
Yeah.
both ways.
Yeah.
So, as long as Cortez, like I said, recently she has kind of decided to be a boxer randomly, but if she goes back to her roots, I don't think that Kong is going to be able to get off as many strikes as she usually does, which is going to kind of start to sway that decision more towards the Cortez side.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, this one's a coin flip for me. But yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Luke Riley versus Kai Kamaka III. So this will be the first Hawaiian who gets slept brutally, gets killed in the cage. The first one, not the last. But yeah, man, I think this is an easy one again. I mean, we look at the odds at the Farid Basharat. I get it's short notice, but man, is Farid Basharat that good? To be a minus 600. I mean, I think Luke Riley's gonna get this done. I think it's going to be a finish in the first 2 rounds. I really don't see. I know Kakamaka's gone to decision multiple times, but this is against very mediocre guys, and we're looking at his fight record. Man, he fought in 2026 in the UFC, and then didn't fight prior to that until was in the UFC in 2021. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're talking about a guy that's not really been at this level of fighting for that long, and his last fight was a split. I can't really recall that fight, but I went,
It
any
was a pretty
splits.
controversial
It
split,
was,
if I
yeah.
remember right.
Yeah, then, I think Luke Riley's going to get him out of there. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of swaying the same thing. It's with Kai. He has a lot of mileage under his belt. He's got 25 plus fights. Luke is obviously a little bit newer, but like you said, if you've made it to the UFC and then you're cut, there's some type of background behind that. You're not able to really show up when you need to. So I think that this is going to be another kind of one of those where it's almost like a Garza thing, where you're coming in, you're fighting someone who is very good at your weight class, and I think that there's just going to be a pretty big, skill differential going on here.
Yeah.
It's only Riley only has 2 fights in the UFC. But he did come from Cage Warriors. That's where Conor came from. So if that gives you any idea on kind of the people that Cage Warriors can help grow, he's a great starter, and I think that that's kind of what we're looking for. As long as Kai doesn't get any takedowns, then I think Riley is just going to kind of put it on him until it's either a finish. They might go to a decision, but I think that this is just going to be kind of Luke Riley's fight from start to finish.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, man. Yeah, I mean, like, I will give a tiny bit of weight of victory. Maybe he's able to take him down and turn this into a WrestleFest. I don't really see that happening. But I think that's really Kai Kamaka's only way to victory. I think if he stands and bangs with him, I think he's done for. But yeah, I think this one's pretty straightforward. All right. Cody Garbrant versus Adrain Yanez. Yeah, man, this one's a bummer. I love my
It
white
is.
boys.
It's a heartbreaker for
Yeah,
both of us, I think.
I love my white boys. And Cody Garbrandt, he is the OG white boy, one of the OG white boys. You know what I'm saying? Not OG white boys, but you know what I'm saying? Like, right in that OG white boy for me. But it's a bummer, man. We really can only win a fight if someone punches us in the nuts about 15 times. That's the only way it's going to happen. So I see this being an easy fight for Yanez. I see a finish coming for Yanez. I think the last fight being a draw with Simone was a BS decision. That's why they need 4 judges like us, man. But nonetheless, yeah, I think this is going to be an easy day in the park for Yanez. Maybe he goes through rounds. If it goes through rounds, I see Yanez kind of dominating all through rounds. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning. I'm leaning more stoppage by Yanez.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. My idea is that if Yanez can invest in leg kicks, Cody is getting older. It's not necessarily the championship Cody that we remember from back in the day, but his fight style is still very mobile. He wants you to chase him. Yanez has great leg kicks. I think if he can invest in those leg kicks early, slow Cody down. I think he either wins by a stoppage, KO, TKO, or he just does enough damage as it kind of prolongs out the fight that he'll take it probably as a unanimous decision.
Yeah, completely agree. I think I agree with you where I'm leaning on this being a finish, but either way, I think Yanez has the method of victory. I don't think Cody has anything even to stall him.
Yeah. I mean, you look at that's kind of my thought is leg kicks to slow Cody down, and this is another one where Yanez has a 4.5-inch reach advantage.
Yeah,
so you talk about someone who has good striking. If you can slow Cody down, they're not that much different in age, but you can kind of tell the miles that Cody has underneath his belt. It's taken more effect on him than others. So. Again, I think that this is going to be either a pretty early stoppage. I think if it gets to round 2, beginning round 3, that it probably Cody can just hang in and go to the distance. But I'm leaning early stoppage or Yanez by unanimous decision.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. All right, man. Your favorite fighter, the Snack Panther. The odds kind of say this fight. I think it's going to be Gable Steveson via rape, JK. But nonetheless, man, I think Gable Steveson kind of has this in the bag. I don't like Gable Steveson. I don't think he's all that. I think it's annoying how they have these guys like Bo Nickel and push them through. I think they can be decent guys. They can come through the rankings and gather their own hype, but they're just, downright determined to be like, no, if they're in USA Wrestling, we're going to put all of our money behind them. I hate that. It's annoying. It makes me hate the fighter. But nonetheless, man, yeah, I think he gets it done. I don't think Ellison has much for him at all. Got molested by Brandon Pericic. Besides that, don't really have much to go off of. They won some by strikes. We've seen the film. Gable Steveson can take a hit. So I think this is going to be I honestly see him taking him down. I don't think this is going to be a strike fest. I don't think anyone or kind of is expecting it to be a strike fest. I think there's going to be some striking, maybe to start off. But then after that, I think Stevenson's just going to secure the win, make sure he has his first win in the UFC, and then maybe in the next fight or the one after, we'll see some more of that striking. What do you think?
Yeah, it's obviously the odds are leaning pretty heavy Stevenson, but
just a tad.
a lot of people are saying that they're feeding Ellison feeding him to Stevenson, but you got to remember you're talking about the Snack Panther.
Yes.
I'm riding with him. If anybody's gonna get 8 tonight, it's gonna be Gable Stevenson.
It's gonna be Gable Stevenson, bro. If the Snack Panther's feasting, he's feasting on Gable.
That is exactly what I'm thinking. I can't disagree with Vegas here saying that the odds are minus 4,000.
Yeah.
But if this is one of the fights that I'm going to get wrong this week, then I'm okay with that by rocking with my dude Ellison.
Rocking with the Snack Panther, man, bro. You need guys like the Snack Panther. You know what I'm saying? You need guys like that. 100%.
Yeah, all right. I agree. I am looking forward to Stevenson's UFC career though to kind of see how he can turn this on. It's going to be similar like a Bo Nickel. He's so dominant in wrestling. He was 103-3 in his wrestling career. He has 3 pro fights, all of them by first round finish, KO, TKO. So I think that's going to be the issue with anybody he fights, whether it's the Snack Panther when Gable loses or later in his UFC career
when he bounces back.
He's fighting people. Yeah, he bounces back from a crazy finish by Ellison. But people are going to be so terrified of his wrestling. We saw that with Bo when he came in. Bo would get a knockout, and you're like, what's happening here? He's not a boxer. His striking looks terrible.
Yeah.
But it's because everyone's so scared of the wrestling.
Yeah.
And you got to remember that Stevenson's training at Jackson Wink. So he's going to come into these not only being one of the most dominant wrestlers in U.S. history, but he has a great striking coach behind him now too. So, well, I'm excited to see kind of how his UFC career pans out.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It'll be more exciting to see him against an actual heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man.
I would agree.
All right. So the main event of the prelims, prelim headliner, I think they typically call it. Old Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whittaker versus Nikita Krylov. So yeah, man, I think this is another one of those where we're kind of split. I love Bobby Knuckles. I love his podcast when he does it. I mean, it's not often anymore, but I love the MMA arcade podcast. Love that. Love video games. Love hearing that stuff. But yeah, man, and on top of that, I love Bobby Knuckles. I love the way he fights. You know what I'm saying? I love his movement, his tenacity. He's a tough guy. You know what I'm saying? I know we're not on the best run. You know, we got, submitted, our jaw broken in by Chimaev, and then a tough split decision to De Ritter. You know, I think that one could have honestly gone either way. You had a lot of glove grabbing by De Ritter in that. You know, I'm coping a little bit, but nonetheless, I think this is a good move for him to finish off his career. I could see it being something like a Paulo Costa transition where it's like he's just faster and a better striker. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's what he's going to have. I think he bulked up the right way. Some people are like, he looks kind of big. No, I think he looks just as muscly. He just has more weight on him. I think he's going to get it done. You know, be quick, be in and out. Maybe he goes to decision and he makes it all the way, but I wouldn't be surprised if he catches Krylov here in the second or third round. I don't see any first round finish for Whittaker, and if there was a first round finish, I would kind of lean more towards Krylov. But I think Whittaker has the skills and has bulked up in the correct way, taken a year to do it, didn't do it the John Jones way, even though they rigged the fight for Cyril, gone, whatever. But nonetheless, yeah. Give me the feedback on Krylov, man. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm gotta lean Krylov here. You know, and this is another one of those heartbreakers. You know, Whittaker was one of my favorite champions. You know, he's just a good dude all around. Like you said, his outside of the octagon, kind of personality is awesome as well. But when you're moving up a weight class, you know, Whittaker wasn't necessarily the biggest middleweight to begin with. He was always weight wise and strength wise up there with everyone, but wasn't necessarily the biggest. Krylov also isn't the biggest light heavyweight, so we keep that in mind. But you're moving up in a weight class. Krylov's gonna have a 4-inch reach advantage here. I'm worried that Whittaker is gonna be slower. He is kind of on the downward slope here. He is getting older, so typically fighters do move up in weight class as they get older. It's a little harder to cut that weight, but I just don't necessarily see it going super well for Whittaker. It does come back to that, he has that championship mindset. It's not like he's a new fighter by any means. We're talking about someone who has over 35 fights versus Krylov, who has over 40. So both of these guys have plenty of miles underneath their belt. But I'm just kind of leaning the idea of Krylov is I think Krylov maybe even started at heavyweight, if I remember right, moved down to light heavyweight. So you have someone who was bigger and moved down, so is now the quicker version of himself versus the opposite side of the road where you have Whittaker who was fast with those blitzes in and out, hands low. But I worry about that hand low style that Whittaker has versus someone who's bigger, has more of a reach, and someone who's a little bit more naturally at this weight class. So I think I'm going to lean Krylov here. I don't know if I necessarily see a stoppage by either one of them, but the thing is that both of them have potential for it. Both of them have knockout power. Both of them have good ground game. You don't see it as often from Whittaker, but it's both still deadly on the ground. So I'm just leaning Krylov probably by kind of outside strike points for a decision.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I think this is going to be a good fight. Very excited for it. Very excited for it. Excited to see. I do see a loss, maybe being a Whittaker retirement. I've been seeing his interviews. I saw his interview with DJ. I've been watching the embedded. Given the embedded, you can't take anything from it. I see Cody Garbrant talking about how he's about to steamroll Yanez. But nonetheless, I think Whittaker's saying he wants more fights, but he has his whole family there on fight week. I think this is a situation is if he gets this done, I see him fighting 2 or 3 more fights. But if he loses, I could definitely see this being end of the road. It's a McGregor card. Might as well finish it off here. But yeah, okay, man, let's get into this main card. Yeah. Okay, so first up on the main card, we have Bobby Green. I'm not calling him King. And Terrence McKinney. Yeah, man. So another one where I think we're split. And I think this is going to be a good fight. I really do. I think we're going to see a finish. I don't see this going to decision at all. But yeah, I think Bobby has the movement, the footwork, and the length to kind of stay at range, stay safe during the first, round blitz of McKinney, the first, train wreck of McKinney, like he normally does, like he does every single fight. And I think if he can stay safe, then he can start, picking them apart, catching them with that counter, catching them with that hook, staying far enough where he doesn't worry about getting clipped by something, and make it through. I see him making it and finishing late second, maybe early third, mid third. But yeah, what do you got on McKinney, man?
Yeah, I just think that McKinney's going to be kind of too much for Green at this point. I do lean kind of the side of people saying like, Bobby Green is just so unpredictable. He's another one that has so many fights under his belt that it's not like he hasn't been in there with younger guys who will rush in and do damage early. He's seen all of it before. But I just see McKinney being kind of too much for him. He is going to be a little bit bigger of a guy. He's got a little bit of a reach advantage to him. He also has good submissions, good takedowns, and that kind of stuff. I think there's just going to be a little bit more all-around worry coming from the McKinney side versus the Bobby Green side. I'm taking McKinney, sitting at range, being able to counter-strike, even with his early kind of round one blitzes that he's known for. I see this being either, I personally think a round one KO, TKO for McKinney, or if it goes to round two, then I think he subs Green.
Yeah, I'm interested in this one. All right, let's get into this next one here. Loner Kavanagh versus Brandon Royval. I think this is a good fight. I think this is the perfect next fight for Loner Kavanagh. I think he's a guy who can be a staple of that top five for flyweight. Do I see him getting past Atara, getting past a Cop? I don't know. But do I see him getting past an aging Royval? Yes, I do. I think he gets this done by finished first or second round. Maybe Royval surprises me here, and he's able to push through, maybe take him down a little bit, stay at range, gas Kavanagh like we've seen him gas versus Johnson, and maybe he's able to get the finish or push it all the way to the end and win a decision. But in my eyes, I think Kavanagh is going to get this done in one or two. I mean, we saw Cop finish him. We saw Vaughn, piece him up pretty good, given it was a tough fight, but then piece him up there at the end. I think Kavanagh had his rough loss to Johnson, and I think he's on his way to the top. Top meaning top five, maybe top three. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much lined up here. I think that loss for Kavanagh is going to be a good wake up for him. I think he took it well compared to some people who come in undefeated and take their loss. But yeah, I'm kind of seeing the same thing. Royval was always a good fighter in my eyes. Always liked watching him. He has fun fights, but I just don't see it going too well for him. I don't know if I necessarily see finishes from either way, but Royval's fight style is so heavy on that league leg when he comes in to strike. I think that's another person. If Kavanagh can invest in leg kicks early, then I just kind of see that. I see Royval trying to press him. He likes to try to take kind of center octagon control. Royval's known for having a good cardio. Even if it doesn't go his favor, he's going to be pressing you even if he's taking shots because he's pressing.
Yeah.
So I think that if Kavanagh can just, it's not like that's a secret coming from Royval. So I'm sure Kavanagh's camp knows that that's going to happen, has trained for that. I see him investing in leg kicks early. Kavanagh has great combos, so if there is a finish, then I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if I see a combo from Kavanagh, dropping Royval and then maybe being able to finish with ground strikes. But in my opinion, I see this probably going the distance and just so much damage kind of adding on to Royval. Even if he has that center octagon control, I think Kavanagh is going to kind of control the fight, even if he is on his back foot, and then lead to a win by decision just because of the damage that he's going to be able to put on Royval.
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up a great point. I mean, he bounced back from that Johnson win by going to a unanimous decision with Brandon Moreno. I'm pretty sure that fight was in Mexico City, which is super high altitude. Now that you bring it up, I definitely this could go to decision. I'm recalling the nightmare that was the Moreno fight. That was a nightmare for me. I love Moreno so much.
Not to mention that was a 5-rounder, and this is only going to be a
Yes, yes,
3-rounder. So he went 5 rounds
yes,
at altitude with a previous champion. Now he's going against Royval on a 3-round.
yeah,
So
100%, man. I 100% agree with you. You definitely kind of convinced me on that one. All right, let's move on to the next one and wrap this card up. We got a couple more. Corey Sandhagen, the Sandman, versus Mario Batista. So yeah, man, I think we're split on this one. This is a rematch between the two. Sandhagen won the first one via armbar, I'm pretty sure, right? And on top of that, it was short notice for Batista. Both of these fighters have grown, but in my eyes, I think Batista has grown more and more recently, whereas I think Sandhagen's kind of peaked. You know what I'm saying? Like, we look back at the Merab fight, I know Merab's tough, man, and I know, go to decision, there was a couple moments of doing okay, but really not much, and compared to every other fight that Merab's had while being champion besides that O'Malley rematch, man, that looks pretty bad, because everyone was able to give him a tough fight. Umar was, and you get that kind of title fight off of beating a Figueiredo, which we can kind of see is kind of out of it, and I think Figueiredo broke his arm during that, or something along those lines, but nonetheless, man, I think Batista is on a run. I think he's going to be too much. I think he's the new era of top 5 for bantamweight. I see him, striking him too hard, keeping him at range, and taking this all the way if necessary, taking this to round 3. But, I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to TKO him round 2 or round 3. What do you think?
yeah, I was pretty split on this one. This is a pretty 50-50 for me. I gotta lean Sandhagen though. I kind of agree where we might have seen Sandhagen. His peak happened, but I think that just leans more towards Sandhagen being the new, the new kind of stalemate for all of these guys who are kind of rising through the ranks. He's so tall for the weight class. He's got creative striking, a great ground game as well, that if he's not going to be beating people and rising through the ranks, getting another, a championship fight or anything like that, then I see him being the person who is kind of that benchmark now to see, are these guys really ready for these top guys? I personally am going to go Sandhagen. I think he has a little bit more experience. He is going to be the taller guy. He doesn't have much of a reach advantage. It's only a 1-inch reach advantage, but he's 3 inches taller, I believe, 3 or 4 inches taller. He does have a deadly ground game too that we don't see too often because he does like to be striking. But I kind of see this going as like a Sandhagen, kind of invest in leg kicks again, slow Mario down, work on his counter striking. Mario's going to be someone who presses, so I think if he can work on the counter striking, get creative like he has in the past, draw someone in and then go for a flying knee. You have the reach advantage, or you have the height advantage, so you have a height advantage, but not a reach advantage. So you got to use that height to an advantage.
Yeah.
Where you see with these flying knees and that kind of stuff. Even if they're going into clinch work and that kind of stuff, Corey being the taller guy, if he starts throwing knees in the clinch, he's going to be hitting Mario in the solar plexus and the kidneys and stuff. Where it'd be a little bit harder for Mario to get as high. So I don't necessarily see a finish. Personally, I think this probably is going to go to a decision. And I think this is going to be kind of similar to the one before, where I think Corey is going to be on his back foot, but I think that the damage that he's going to be able to put on Bautista is going to get him decision in the end.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, I'm very interested in this one. I think this is going to be a high-level fight between the two. But yeah, let's get into it. So our, what do we call this? Our fight before the main event? What do you call it?
Co-main.
Is it a co-main? Still a co-main?
Yep, co-main
event.
event.
Co-main event. I was like, is a co-main event only for championship fights? Man, I sound like a casual right now. But nonetheless, I hate this Frenchie. I hate him with all my heart. I hate this Frenchie so much, and I hope Paddy slimes him out. I see if Moicano is able to do what he's able to do to BSD. To me, I think Paddy is a younger version of Moicano to me, with a little bit better striking, a little bit more durability, a lot more durability. But yeah, man, I see Paddy getting this done. by probably submission by the second or third round, probably closer to the end of the second in the third round. If not, I could see him winning a decision, but I think this is going to be a sub in the late second or third round. I hate this Frenchie so much. There's no one you could put against him that would make me pick him. I will get all my fight picks wrong until he is no longer in the UFC. But yeah, man, give me your breakdown.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a BSD all day kind of thing. You're talking about his most recent loss, which was 2 years ago, and it was a doctor stoppage, I believe, for a TKO. Since gone on to have 2 subs, 2 knockouts, one within like the first 30 seconds of a fight. Now, that was against Dariush, someone who is definitely on the downslide, but
Yeah.
still has sub potential, has knockout potential, does not care to go forward. First of all, this fight has fight of the night written all over it.
Yep.
I think
100,
both of these
100%.
guys are ready to go toe to toe at the line and swing. But yeah, I got to lean BSD here. He's riding a four fight win streak. Like I said, he's 2 sub, 2 TKO KOs in the last 4. His cardio is up there with the best. He is always hunting for finishes. He's not someone that likes to sit back and just kind of coast to a decision. He's super heavy pressure, and his grappling is great. 11 subs in his professional career with 17 wins, and 11 are subs. Now, Paddy is great on the ground too. It's something that he doesn't get as much flowers for, I think, because he is kind of that scouser. I'm ready to fight someone. Just wants to stand and bang. But I don't see this fight going the distance either. I definitely see this being a finish, but I'm going to have to go BSD by stoppage. I think this is going to be around 1 or 2 TKO or sub. I don't think he's going to take Paddy down and kind of, have a jiu-jitsu match with him to get a sub. But I think if he can drop him, he'll go to the ground and he'll either hunt for that finish with TKO ground strikes or hunt for that finish with a sub. But he's not going to be someone who goes to the ground and then just starts, wrestling him. He's always hunting for that finish. So I got to go BSD in this one.
Yeah, man. I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah, man, BSD's a good fighter. I hate it. I hate it so much, especially after that roofie fight, man. That's haunted me to this day.
The only thing that I worry about is BSD has heavy forward pressure, which leaves himself open to counters. And Paddy has some good draw you into some kind of tricky, strikes you don't see coming. So that's again why I'm leaning BSD, but I don't see this going to the finish, or I don't see this going to the judges because of finishes coming from both sides. So again, I think this is fight of the night written all over it. There's a reason that they made these guys co-main on a Conor and Max fight.
Yeah, 100%, man. I agree. All right, man. Let's get into the final fight and the biggest fight. I mean, I'd argue, man, for me, this is the biggest fight this year. I love McGregor so much. McGregor was the guy to get me into the UFC. I grew up a WWE kid. My dad got me into it. It's kind of like my whole family thing, especially in the area we're from. A lot of people are into WWE. And then I found McGregor like when I was in college, around like 2017, 2016 era. And, bro, man, my family is, obviously I'm here in America, but my family's, real Irish, especially my mom's side. And I love Conor McGregor, man. I think he embodies like what I'm about, what I'm saying, where it's, you can't tell me what I can't do, and I'm going to show you. He says what he wants to, and then he works towards it. And it doesn't always mean you're a winner. You know what I'm saying? And I think he's a great embodiment of it, man. I love it. Even in his losses, some of his speeches after, I think he reflects greatly on these situations. Now, not to say anyone's a perfect man. I don't think Conor's close to a perfect man by any means. But as a fighter and as a UFC star, he's, meant the most to me probably out of any of them. But, up there is also like Sean Strickland, I think. But yeah, man, I have faith. I'm riding on faith. I have such belief that Conor is going to come in here and fucking murder this Hawaiian in the middle of the octagon, in the middle of Las Vegas, Saturday night. What do you think, man? Tell me what this Islander is going to do.
Yeah, I'm obviously leading Holloway here. It's I like everyone is talking about, the big conversations here is going to be, this is Holloway moving up to 170, something he's not fought at, and this is Conor coming off of a 4-year, 5-year layoff. Those are going to be the two biggest question marks. I think that this is just going to come down to ring rust is a real thing. Conor is the notorious. I I think Holloway's going to win. I want Holloway to win. There's nothing more from me that would hope that Conor comes in is prime Conor.
Yeah.
If we see Conor come in prime Conor and goes on a 5-fight win streak, sign me up.
Yeah.
All that's going to do is make good fights for us and more money for the UFC. But I just see this being kind of, I don't want to say one-sided because Conor is dangerous. He's going to have the reach advantage even for being the shorter guy. But Holloway has a very good chin. It's been cracked, but he has a good chin. The layoff is going to be a big thing with Conor.
Mm-hmm.
Holloway is obviously known for his kind of volume striking and going the distance. Conor is notorious for having one, maybe 2 rounds worth of a gas tank. So I think that this is going to be Max is too skilled and too knowledgeable to fall into these traps that Conor's going to try to set for him.
Yeah.
And then I just see Max kind of dragging him into those late rounds. And if you start getting into those 3, 4, 5 rounds with Max Holloway, there's not many people in the UFC that do those late rounds better than him.
Yeah.
I just see Max kind of overwhelming him with those volume strikes. The biggest thing is going to be Max is a slower starter, so I think as long as he survives that first round, kind of gets that feeling. He isn't known for his knockout power either. So the only way that he's going to get a finish is going to be if it goes later rounds, and it's just kind of that, like I said, that volume overwhelming Conor in those
down.
4th, 5th rounds. He does like to trade as well. We see him all the time. He's known for the point down. Conor's not someone that you're going to want to stand and trade with. Conor is an absolute sniper with his left hand. But I just see this going. I don't think Max is going to be as affected moving up to 170 as Conor is going to be affected coming off of a layoff. So I see this being maybe a Conor taking 1 or 2 rounds early and Max just kind of running away with the fight later on.
Yeah. And, I also, to kind of go to your point, coming off that Oliveira loss where you just kind of get smothered, I think that's also kind of going to motivate him to be like, I'm not falling for these dumb traps. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've already call it an embarrassment. It was a horrible fight to watch, but it's kind of an embarrassment. You know what I'm saying? That's able to happen to you at being acclaimed as a Hall of Fame fighter. So I think this is really his mark to like, okay, let's get this done. You know what I'm saying? 100% I agree. And I 100%, I mean, if you look at McGregor's fight, we get into round 3, 4, I start to worry a lot. And I think Demetrius Johnson said something great where he was like, a good thing for Holloway to do is to start hitting him with those shitty strikes, to the, a leg kick to the oblique. You know what I'm saying? Remind McGregor why you don't want to fight anymore. You know what I'm saying? Not the stuff you're going to hit with in sparring. You know what I'm saying? No one's going to go for those dirty hits in sparring, even though they're legal. Because they could cause damage. In the UFC fight, man, they're going to go for it. We've seen Khalil Roundtree blow out a dude's knee. You know what I'm saying? We've seen him punt a man trying to kill him. I think that's going to be, that's another way that Holloway could win is to remind McGregor, like, dude, you don't want to be back in here. You have so much money. You have such a nice life outside this. Go back to that. You know what I'm saying? But he's Irish, and he's not going to do that. He's a grown man. He's going to come in there. He's going to lay an ass whooping on.
There's a reason that they call him the Fighting Irish, but I just see that this is gonna, like you said, this is gonna be a long layover or a long layoff for him. Because of his kind of wide karate stance, it's gonna leave him open to those oblique kicks and leg kicks from Holloway. So Holloway has a longer leg reach advantage. So I think if he can invest in some of that stuff, and in all honesty, I don't even think he needs to invest in leg kicks all that much because he's gonna have the cardio and he's gonna win later rounds anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, if he leans into something a little bit, we don't want to say dirty tactics because it is legal strike, but something like the oblique kick, kind of like you're saying, where you're just going like, McGregor, remember, like, this is fight. This sucks. No one needs to get in here and get their ass beat.
Yeah.
It's going to kind of wake him up. And yeah, I see Max just kind of overwhelming him with those shots and kind of retiring for the 12th time or whatever he's at now.
Yeah, man. Well, we have our differences on that. All right, let's wrap this up and let's go over the best bets and props we have. All right, man. I'm going to let you do a walkthrough of this, okay? And just a heads up, we get all of these from, is it FanDuel, correct?
Yeah. So I pulled all of these from FanDuel. Like we said at the beginning, this is July 8th at about now it's about 10:45 p.m. Eastern Standard. But all of these are pulled from FanDuel. Obviously, these odds are subject to change, and look around on your different sports books, see if you can find any different lines that are a little bit better. But I got three here that I think are good payouts as well as pretty good odds of happening. Basharat by KO, TKO, or sub. So it's just Basharat by a finish. Um, Again, I just don't see Garza, someone who already has a loss against someone who is like 4-3 or
4-2,
something.
yeah, 4-2, yeah.
I just don't see him lasting. So that's a plus 105. We got Pinas by KO, TKO, kind of same thing. I think it's just going to be the KO artist, the younger guy, the faster guy, the longer reach that's going to look for that finish. This is one that we differed on the fight pick, but I have McKinney by KO, TKO, or sub. Again, I think that this is just going to be that overwhelm, whether it's an early kind of blitz that McKinney's known for, where he kind of drops green, or a round 2 or 3 sub. I think he gets that one done. That one's at a minus 145. And then kind of the big payout for this weekend, and one that I was surprised when I made that had this big of a payout, the BSD and Patty fight, a parlay over 1.5 rounds. Both of them are durable, so
Yep.
I could see this fight ending like first 30 seconds, but I think if it goes out of the first 30, then you're getting into that second round. And then I think that this is going to be a finish, probably a TKO or KO. Both are durable, so I don't see a walk-off knockout, but someone getting dropped and then hunting for that finish with TKO ground strikes, I see that lining up perfect. So this one I took over 1.5 rounds, KO, TKO, and that's a plus 445 odds.
Yeah, man, I like all of that. I really do. I think, the ones I like that parlay a lot. Especially not throwing a lot of money on it because there could be a sub or something like that. But I 100% agree with your kind of line of analysis there. It is both of these guys are durable, and both of these guys are gonna want to kill each other. You know what I'm saying? So 100%. But yeah, man, let's wrap this up. We've held people hostage for long enough. This is going to be our first post. Please let us know anything you'd like to see changed, anything you'd like to see added. Obviously, we're going to tinker with it as we go on, but the goal is to put one of these out once a week for the fights. We might get into the Contender Series era if we can kind of get this going at a good pace. But yeah, the plan is to do it for every card every week, as long as we have time, and just to go back and forth on this. Anything you want to finish us off with, man?
No, not really. I think we covered everything. Like you said, any differences that you guys want to see, drop some comments. This is just two friends just kind of bullshitting with each other, going over fights. We're both fight fans. Our friendship grew closer because of just being no lives when it comes to UFC
Yes,
stuff.
man.
So
We don't
you
miss a
guys
fight.
drop stuff in the comments, open up discussion with us, open up discussions with other people. This is what this whole kind of video is supposed to be about, is just friends bullshitting about UFC MMA stuff. So
Yeah, man, I'm awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited to start doing this, and I'm very excited for the fights this weekend. But yeah, man, look out for a video coming next week. And yeah, like he said, leave a comment, leave a like. I appreciate it. You guys have a good one.
take it easy, guys.